I've walked into cursed places before. Swamps that hum with dead voices. Churches with blood in the mortar. One time, a school in Arkansas that wouldn't stop crying after midnight. But this forest? This place was different the moment I stepped out of the truck. The trees were too still, too tall. The fog didn't float, it clung to the ground like it was hiding something beneath it. And even before I shut the door behind me, I heard it. A sound like breathing. Not mine. Not wind. Something deeper. I checked the GPS again. Blank. Compass needle spinning. No bars, no signal. Just me and the gear in the back of the truck. And whatever the hell was watching from inside those woods. The state ranger who hired me didn't wait long to disappear after handing me the envelope. A polite nod, a forced smile, and he drove off like the devil was sitting in my passenger seat. He didn't want answers, he wanted the problem gone. Inside the envelope was a map, hand-drawn in shaky lines. Red ink circled a place labeled Clearing 6. That's where the last patrol vanished. They never found the bodies, just radios still hissing and boots turned upside down like someone had poured the men out of them. I strapped on my pack, locked the truck, and stepped into Crimson Hollow. The temperature dropped immediately. The forest swallowed sound. My boots didn't crunch, they sank. The moss was thick, sponge-like, and it seemed to tug a little when I lifted my feet. Every few yards, the trees leaned in closer, like they were listening. Or worse, whispering to each other about me. I pulled out my recorder and pressed record. Black log, entry 29. Crimson Hollow, Oregon. Contract initiated. Forest active, signs of distortion already present. GPS useless. Time is. I don't know. Watch stopped. Updating as I go. I paused. There it was again. That breathing sound. Close. Behind me. I turned fast. Nothing there. But the fog had thickened like it didn't want me to see what was waiting ahead. I should have backed out. Maybe that would have been smart. But I didn't come here for a paycheck. I came because this was the last place I saw Ethan Vale alive. 12 years ago. He was more than a mentor. He was the reason I survived that first job in the Everglades. The one with the shrieking dolls and the flooded chapel. Ethan taught me everything. How to spot the signs, how to read the silence, how to fight back when prayer failed. He also taught me how dangerous curiosity could be. Because it was his curiosity that dragged us into this forest a dozen years ago. And it was his voice I sometimes still hear in my dreams. Screaming. Or laughing. I moved deeper, checking the map. According to it, I was close to the old Ranger Tower, abandoned since the 90s. A good place to set camp and get eyes from above. As I walked, I noticed the bark on the trees had changed. Scratched. No etched. Symbols. Circular. Spirals that looped into themselves. They reminded me of crop circles, but smaller and more violent. Like something had carved them from the inside out. One tree had something different. A word. Burned into its side. John. I stared at it. Backed away. How the hell did it know my name? The whispering stopped. The forest fell dead quiet. And from deeper within, somewhere I couldn't see, a voice, low, almost calm, spoke from the fog. You came back. My fingers gripped the recorder tight. I didn't say a word. I just kept walking. Because whether it was the forest, a demon, or Ethan himself, something in Crimson Hollow remembered me. And it was waiting. The first thing I noticed when I stepped into Crimson Hollow was the silence. Not the kind of silence you get in an empty room or a quiet street. No, this was something heavier. Like the air itself was holding its breath. No birds. No wind. Just the sound of my boots pressing into the damp soil. I had been in haunted forests before, 16 of them to be exact. Each one had its own taste of wrong. But this one didn't just feel haunted. It felt awake. My pack was heavy on my shoulders. Inside, I had the tools I trusted: salt, iron nails, black candles, a digital recorder, a compass that never worked in cursed places, and a sawed-off shotgun with shells filled with silver and ash. Just in case. I walked slow, marking trees with a strip of white cloth every 10 paces. Standard procedure. Helps me find my way back when the forest starts to mess with my head. And it always does. By the 4th marker, the cloth had vanished. Torn off. Gone. That's when I started hearing the trees whisper. Not loud. Not words. Just the soft rustle of leaves that didn't move, branches creaking like old bones even though there was no wind. I stopped and listened. Then I heard it, my name. John. Quiet. Dragged out. Like someone breathing it through dirt. I spun around, heart thumping hard in my chest. Nothing. Just trees. old, tall, and too close together. I scanned the trunks, looking for carvings or signs, anything familiar. That's when I saw the first one. A symbol, etched deep into the bark of a dead pine, 3 overlapping circles, with a line cutting through the center. My breath caught in my throat. It was Ethan's mark. His personal sigil. He used it to anchor energy, whatever that meant. I hadn't seen it in over a decade. I took out my phone to take a picture, but the screen was dead. Fully charged 20 minutes ago, now blank. I tried my backup battery. No use. Time to fall back on old-school gear. I set up my handheld recorder, pressed the red button, and spoke. Black log, entry 30. I'm in Crimson Hollow. The forest is responding. Equipment interference confirmed. I've found Ethan Vale's symbol. Either someone's copying his work, or he never left. I clipped the recorder to my jacket and kept moving, stepping over twisted roots and patches of black moss that smelled like rot. The trees leaned in closer the deeper I went, as if watching. Eventually, I came to a clearing. A wide circle of bare earth, no grass, no life. In the center stood a large rock, flat-topped, covered in dried stains. Not red. Dark brown, almost black. I didn't have to guess. I'd seen blood dried like that before. Too much of it. A ring of animal bones surrounded the rock, some small, some big, too big for any local wildlife. I crouched and picked up a femur. Human. Clean. Picked dry. Then, the wind returned, sudden and cold. It rushed through the trees and hit me hard in the back, nearly knocking me forward onto the stone. I stood and turned. Every white cloth I'd tied earlier, they were hanging now from the branches above the clearing. All of them. And each one had my name written across it, in red. Not ink. Not paint. Blood. I didn't run. Running gets you killed in places like this. Instead, I stepped back slowly, out of the clearing, heart thudding like a drum. I didn't speak. Didn't breathe. Just moved. Once I was about 50 feet away, I sat down on a dry log and turned off the recorder. That's when it said it again, closer this time. John. This time I didn't turn, because the voice came from behind my eyes, inside my skull, and it sounded like Ethan. The fire crackled weakly in front of me. I sat there in my tent, the zipper halfway closed, letting in the damp, pine-scented air of Crimson Hollow. The forest was quiet now, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that pressed down on you, like something holding its breath just beyond the treeline. I held my recorder in my hand, thumb hovering over the red button. It was old, scarred, and slightly melted on one corner, souvenir from a job in Louisiana. But it still worked. I hit record. This is John Mercer, I said, my voice low, almost a whisper. Black log entry number 29. Crimson Hollow, Oregon. I paused and glanced at the tent flap again. Nothing but black trees and swirling mist. Still, I didn't like turning my back to the woods. Not here. I'm 5 miles deep into the forest now. No paths, no markers. Just animal bones and dead moss. The air smells wrong. Like rain on something rotting. I rubbed my eyes. I hadn't slept well. The dreams were getting worse. Always the same, Ethan's voice calling out from between the trees. But the voice wasn't his, not exactly. It was too slow, too smooth, like something trying to remember how he used to sound. The equipment is already acting strange. The compass spun in circles all day. EMF spikes every 20 minutes, but only near that old burnt patch I found. Smells like sulfur. Trees are warped there, bent inwards like ribs. I think that was the ritual site. I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry. I found something else. A tree with fresh carvings. Same sigils Ethan used in Romania, but deeper. More violent. The bark was bleeding. Literally. Not sap. Blood. Thick, black, and hot. I touched it. My fingers still sting. I stopped the recording. I had to. My hands were starting to shake. I leaned back, resting against my pack. The silence outside had shifted again. Less like holding a breath now, more like watching. You develop a sense for these things when you've been doing this long enough. Evil isn't always loud. Sometimes it watches. Waits. Smiles with no mouth. I looked at the photos I had laid out on the tent floor. Victims, gear notes, Ethan's last photo before he disappeared. He stood smiling, eyes squinting from sunlight, holding up a demon trap carved from ashwood. I knew that face. I trusted that man. And yet, here I was, hearing his voice in my nightmares. The last dream had ended differently. He was standing in the fog, his back to me, holding something in his hand. When I called his name, he turned, but his face was blank. No mouth. No eyes. Just smooth skin and black tears leaking down where his eyes should have been. And he said my name in that slow, broken way. Not John. Something like John. I recorded again. I believe Ethan's still here. Or what's left of him. I think the ritual worked. Not the way he intended, but something heard him. And now it wants me too. A sharp crack outside made me freeze. Not a twig snapping. This was louder. Heavier. Like something stepped down hard. My hand went to the gun beside my sleeping bag. A modified SIG with silver-inscribed rounds. I didn't even like using it. But out here, I'd be a fool not to carry it. Another sound. A whisper. Barely audible. But it was my name again. Coming from the trees. I slowly reached over and turned off the recorder. Some part of me wanted to call out. Wanted to ask, Ethan, is that you? But I didn't. Because I already knew the answer. And the thing out there? It wasn't waiting for a conversation. It was waiting for a door. And I was the one standing too close to the handle. The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. Not peaceful quiet. This was the kind of silence that made your skin tighten. Like the trees were holding their breath. Watching. I'd been inside Crimson Hollow for almost a full day, and the deeper I went, the more it felt like the place was alive. Not in the poetic, nature is beautiful sense. I mean alive. Breathing. Listening. I had just crossed a shallow creek when I noticed the roots. They looked normal at first. Twisted, gnarled like any old tree. But something about them didn't sit right with me. They were too red. The kind of red that doesn't belong in nature. The kind that reminds you of open wounds. I knelt down, brushed away some of the damp leaves. My fingers came back wet. Blood. Thick. Dark. Warm. I stared at it for a long moment. This wasn't sap. I'd seen blood more times than I care to remember. I knew the difference. I knew that smell. I stood quickly, heart pounding. The root twitched. Just slightly. Like something deep beneath the ground had flinched. I stepped back. And that's when the screaming started. It wasn't loud at first. Just a distant wail, carried on the wind. But it grew fast. 1 second it sounded like a baby crying. The next, it was a woman screaming in agony. Then laughter. High-pitched and broken. I spun around, but there was nothing there. The trees groaned. One of them creaked louder than the rest. I turned my flashlight toward it and froze. The bark was splitting open. Right down the middle. And from that crack, more blood. Pouring, not dripping. The tree wept like it had lost everything. And then I saw the teeth. Embedded in the bark. Small, human teeth. Some were rotted, others clean. Like 100 children had their mouths pushed into the wood and left behind pieces of themselves. I took a step back, then another. Crack. Something moved behind me. I turned just in time to see it. A raccoon, or what used to be a raccoon, came charging at me. But its eyes were gone. Not gouged out. Stitched shut with black wire. Its body was thin, ribs pushing through the skin. But worse, its stomach was open. Hollow. Empty. Like something had scooped out its insides and stuffed it with silence. It lunged. I dodged and swung my flashlight. It hit the thing in the skull with a sickening crunch. The body dropped, twitching violently before going still. I stood there, panting, heart slamming in my chest. I didn't speak. Didn't move. Just listened. The screaming had stopped. The forest had gone quiet again. Too quiet. I looked back at the bleeding tree. The crack in the bark was closing, slowly, as if it had never been open. I knelt beside the dead raccoon. Its mouth hung open, filled with moss and teeth. Human teeth. I forced myself to stay calm. Took a deep breath. And then I heard it. A voice. Soft. Whispering from inside the tree. You came back, John. My blood turned to ice. I didn't say anything. Just stared at the trunk, the whisper curling around me like cold breath. You left me here, but I never left you. I backed away slowly, flashlight trembling in my hand, because I recognized the voice. It was Ethan, but it wasn't just him anymore. It was something wearing him, and it knew I was here. The wind had stopped. That was the first thing I noticed when I stepped out of my tent that night. No rustling leaves, no distant owls, not even the soft hum of insects. Just silence, thick and heavy, pressing in from every direction like a wet blanket. I swept my flashlight across the tree line. The beam flickered, buzzed, and then steadied. Shadows danced between the trunks, long and thin like twisted fingers. I tried to shake the feeling crawling up my spine. But it stayed. My boots crunched softly against the dead leaves as I moved closer to the edge of the clearing. The air felt colder here, sharper. Every breath I took stung my lungs. And then I saw him. High in the trees, just beyond the first row of branches, there was a figure. Still. Watching. I froze. He stood on a branch that looked too thin to hold a bird, let alone a man. But he didn't sway. He didn't move. His head was tilted slightly to one side, like he was curious. Like he knew me. My mouth went dry. I raised the flashlight slowly, trying not to blink. The beam hit the figure dead on, and for a second my heart stopped. It was Ethan. Or it looked like him. The face was pale, stretched thin, almost too long for a normal skull. His eyes were sunken pits. No light in them. Just endless dark. Ethan? I whispered, barely able to breathe. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, slowly, painfully, he crouched like some strange animal and began to crawl along the branch toward me. That's when I heard it. A voice, not out loud, but inside my head. A memory twisted. You remember that night in Yemen, don't you? It was Ethan's voice. But it wasn't coming from the figure above me. It was echoing inside my skull, mixing with my thoughts. No, I said out loud, backing away. You froze when we found the boy. You left me alone to deal with it. I clutched my temples. My flashlight dropped, spinning across the dirt. You begged me to fix it, to erase the memory. I did that for you, John. The figure in the tree was gone. I spun around, chest heaving, sweat pouring down my neck. But there was nothing. Only trees. Empty branches. Dead silence. I picked up the flashlight and backed toward camp, every nerve on fire. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me. The whispering didn't stop, it changed. Now it was my sister's voice. Why didn't you save me, John? Why did you let me go into the lake that night? I covered my ears, fell to my knees. I screamed. Not out of fear, but out of rage. I shouted into the dark. Shut up. You're not her. You're not him. The forest listened. Then the voice laughed. Not a deep demonic laugh, but Ethan's real laugh. Soft. Casual. Familiar. You're getting closer. Just a little deeper, and you'll remember everything. I sat there in the dirt, alone, shaking. The flashlight flickered once, then twice, and died. The man in the trees was gone, but the forest was wide awake. And I knew now that Ethan wasn't just haunting me. He was waiting for me, calling me, and I was starting to answer. The rain had stopped. The forest, for once, was quiet, too quiet. No birds, no wind, no snapping branches in the distance. Just stillness, as if the entire hollow had paused, watching, waiting for something to unfold. I stood at the edge of a clearing where the trees grew close together, their trunks bent in unnatural arches, forming something like a ribcage around a lump of moss-covered earth. It pulsed slightly like it was breathing. I approached carefully, flashlight low, boots sinking into wet soil. That's when I saw the bones, half buried in the earth. Human bones, dozens of them. Femurs, ribs, shattered skulls. Some yellowed, some fresh, all tangled in thick roots, as if the forest had claimed their flesh and kept their remains as trophies. Then I noticed the shape beneath it all. A small box. Wood, rotted black. Almost completely swallowed by the earth. I dropped to my knees and started digging with my hands. The soil was wet, sticky. It clung to my skin like blood. But I didn't stop. Not when the wind picked up suddenly. Not when the trees started groaning like something alive was crawling just under the bark. I kept digging until I pulled it free. A weathered journal, leather-bound, its edges eaten by time and insects. The name stamped on the cover made my hands go numb. Ethan Vale. I didn't move for a long while. My breath fogged in front of me, even though the air was warm. My pulse was loud in my ears, the forest pressing against me like it wanted the journal back. But I opened it anyway. The first page was smeared, but I could still read most of it. To see the forest is to see the truth beneath the lie of light. Crimson Hollow is not cursed. It's pure. We're the infection. I'm not here to exorcise it. I'm here to join it. I swallowed hard and turned the page. Drawings, hand-sketched sigils, root patterns that mirrored the symbols carved into the trees. Notes in the margins. The entity sleeps beneath the hollow. Not demonic. Not divine. Older. Hungrier. Another page. This one described a ritual. Salt mixed with ash. Blood poured into the bark of a vessel tree. Chants in a language I didn't recognize but felt wrong just to read. And then a line, scrawled across an entire page. Kuroth is not the forest. Kuroth is what the forest protects. I closed the book and stared into the dirt. Everything made sense now. The strange way the forest had been around me. The whispers. The hallucinations. Ethan didn't disappear. He offered himself. This wasn't about exorcising some wandering spirit. This was about a seed that had been planted long before I came here. And Ethan had helped it grow. I looked back toward the trees. Somewhere out there, Ethan was still alive. Changed. Twisted. Maybe no longer even human. But alive. And if he'd written this, if he'd performed that ritual, then maybe this wasn't just about stopping him. Maybe I had to stop something. He woke up. I tucked the journal into my pack, stood slowly, and listened. The wind had picked up again. But it wasn't wind. It was breathing. Deep, slow, and massive. Coming from the earth itself. And I had the feeling that whatever was beneath me had just opened its eyes. I didn't sleep that night. Something in the wind sounded like it was breathing, long, slow, and heavy, like the forest itself had lungs. Every branch creak echoed like bones snapping, and no matter how tightly I wrapped my coat around me, the cold found a way in. By morning, the mist had thickened. It wasn't drifting anymore. It just hung there like a damp curtain, hiding everything past a few feet. I packed up what gear I could carry and left the rest. I had a feeling I wouldn't be coming back to this camp anyway. The trees grew stranger the deeper I went. Their bark was blackened like they'd been burned centuries ago, but not a single flame had touched them. Roots crawled across the ground like veins under skin, and the leaves above were thin and sharp like daggers. I stopped counting how many animal bones I stepped over. Some looked fresh, and then I saw it. The trees opened up like a wound in the woods, revealing a wide clearing shaped like a circle. In the middle stood a tree unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was massive, thicker than a cabin, rising high into the sky until the top vanished in the fog. Its bark wasn't just black, it pulsed. Like it was breathing. Like it was alive in a way trees shouldn't be. Faces bulged from its trunk. Human faces. Some were stretched in silent screams. Others looked peaceful, almost asleep. Their eyes were shut, but I had the sick feeling they could open at any second. The roots of the tree twisted out in every direction, and where they met the earth, it wasn't soil anymore, it was bone. A carpet of skulls, ribs, vertebrae, tangled together like they'd grown that way. I felt my knees go weak. But then, through all that horror, something familiar caught my eye. A small silver necklace. It was half buried beneath one of the thick roots, the chain broken, the charm covered in dirt. I dropped to my knees and dug it out with shaking hands. It was shaped like a crescent moon. I knew that necklace. I knew it because I gave it to my sister on her 13th birthday. I stared at it for what felt like an hour, but probably wasn't even a minute. My heart was pounding so hard I thought the faces on the tree would hear it. She had it with her the night she died. Or disappeared. Or whatever the hell actually happened to her. I looked up at the tree again, suddenly unsure of everything I thought I knew. Had she been here? Had Ethan brought her here? Was she part of this thing now? I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, my mouth dry as ash. I backed away slowly, but the roots shifted under my feet. Not like they moved, more like they tensed. Like they knew I was there. And then I heard it. A voice, soft and broken, carried on the wind like a whisper. John. It was her voice. I spun around, flashlight sweeping through the mist. Nothing. Just the breathing of the forest. Just the weight of the ritual tree watching me without eyes. I didn't run. I couldn't. My legs wouldn't obey. Instead, I stepped forward, closer to the trunk, closer to the thing that might be holding my sister inside it. The bark near the bottom was split, just enough to look like a door. Part of me wanted to open it, tear it apart with my bare hands if I had to. Find her. Save her. Or at least get answers. But I knew I wasn't ready. Not yet. So I did the next best thing. I pulled out my knife and carved a symbol into the root. A seal I learned in Afghanistan. Not holy, not perfect, but a warning. A mark. My mark. Then I whispered to the tree. I'm coming back. The faces didn't move. The tree didn't respond. But I felt it. A hum beneath the ground. A promise. I turned and walked back into the mist, her necklace clenched in my fist. Something told me the forest had just let me go for now. I stepped into the clearing, and the air changed. It wasn't just colder, it was heavier. The fog that had followed me like a curse all night now hung still, like it was waiting. Everything was dead quiet. No wind, no birds, not even the soft rustling of branches. Just silence. And then I saw him. He was standing beneath a crooked tree that looked more bone than bark. Its limbs twisted into the sky like fingers reaching for something that would never come. Behind him, the blackened roots pulsed faintly, alive, breathing. He was turned away from me, staring at something I couldn't see. His shoulders moved slowly up and down, like he was savoring the silence. "Ethan," I said. He didn't turn around. Not right away. I took a step forward, the leaves crunching under my boots louder than thunder in that stillness. "I told you not to come back," his voice finally came. It was familiar, but something was wrong. There was a hum behind the words, like two voices speaking at once, his and something buried beneath it. "I came for answers," I said, "and to finish what we started." He turned. For a second, I froze. He looked like Ethan, but stretched, worn thin, like he had been melted down and reshaped. His skin had strange cracks along his neck and arms, and from inside those cracks, something darker shimmered, like ink swirling under glass. His eyes weren't just black. They were deep, endless, like staring into a well with no bottom. And he smiled. "You've aged," he said. "So have you," I replied. "Badly." He chuckled, and the sound made my stomach twist. It was human, but behind it was that same echo, the other voice. "I tried to warn you, John," he said, walking closer. His footsteps didn't make a sound. "You can't fight what lives beneath. You only feed it." "You knew my sister was here," I said, my voice trembling. "You let her die." He tilted his head like a curious bird. "No," he whispered. "I let her live." He raised a hand and the trees behind him shifted, pulling back like curtains, and I saw it. A body, nailed to the center trunk of the ritual tree, roots curled around it like a cradle. Her necklace hung around its neck. I stumbled forward before I could stop myself, eyes wide. "She's been part of the forest longer than I have," he said softly. "She doesn't feel pain anymore. None of them do." "You're sick," I hissed. My hands were shaking. "I'm evolved," he said. "We wanted to purge evil. We were fools. The forest doesn't need purging. It needs a voice." I gave it mine. I reached into my coat and drew the iron blade. "Holy etched, blessed in fire and blood." I pointed it at him. "This ends tonight." He smiled again. Wider. "You never understood," he said, stepping closer. "The forest doesn't fight. It absorbs. That's why you came back, isn't it? You feel it, don't you? It calls to you like it called to me." "I came back," I said through clenched teeth, "to make sure it never calls again." The forest shifted. The fog thickened. Roots twitched under the ground, slithering toward me like snakes. The sky above swirled in slow circles, and a low hum began to rise, from the trees, the roots, the very air. It wasn't just Ethan anymore. It was the forest. It was Kuroth, and it had waited long enough. I tightened my grip on the blade and stepped into the circle. "Then come," Ethan whispered. "Let the forest decide who belongs." And I did. I don't remember walking into the heart of the forest. One moment I was standing by the twisted tree with the faces pressed into its bark. The next, I was somewhere else. Somewhere wrong. The air was thick, like breathing through syrup. My legs felt like they were sinking, not into mud, but into something alive. Every step I took, the ground pulsed beneath my boots, as if I was walking across a giant beating heart buried under the roots. And then he was there. Ethan. He didn't look human anymore. His skin was stretched tight, gray as ash, and veined with thick black tendrils that snaked down his arms and neck like vines. His eyes were the worst, empty pits burning with slow, red fire. Not anger. Not hate. Just hunger. He smiled at me, calm and quiet, like we were meeting over coffee. "John," he said, voice low and smooth. "You finally made it." I raised my knife, iron blade, blessed in the old rite, and pointed it at him. "You're not Ethan." He tilted his head. "I'm more Ethan than I ever was. And I'm more than that now." The forest shifted around us. Trees groaned. The wind carried voices, my voice, my sister's voice, Ethan's voice, all jumbled, echoing, taunting. I swallowed hard. "What is this place?" "The heart," Ethan said. "The center of Kuroth. It's where all memory lives, where pain is grown like fruit." I stepped back. My head felt light. Something behind me moved, slowly, like roots twisting in sleep. I dared not turn around. "You think this thing is a god?" I said. "It's just another demon. Another liar. Another parasite." Ethan's smile widened. "Then why does it remember your sister better than you do?" Suddenly, I wasn't in the clearing anymore. I was standing in my childhood kitchen. My sister sat at the table, drawing in her notebook. Her hair was tied up like always, her laugh sharp and real. I felt tears come without warning. She looked up at me. "John, why did you let me go with him?" I blinked, and we were back. The forest. The pulsing ground. Ethan standing 10 feet away, his eyes full of mock sympathy. That wasn't real, I muttered. Just a trick. It was memory, Ethan said. Kuroth feeds on the pieces we bury. That pain? It gives shape to the hollow. It lets us become something more. He stepped closer. You don't have to run from it anymore. You can join me. Let the forest show you the truth. Let it peel away the lies they fed you. I could feel it then. A pulse. Deep in my skull. Like something was knocking gently on the inside of my mind, asking to be let in. You've been chasing shadows for years, John, Ethan said softly. Looking for answers. But the pain never left, did it? The knife trembled in my hand. I can make it stop. Kuroth can give you peace. Not silence. Peace. The kind that holds your soul still, like a lake before dawn. Another step closer. Or, he said, you can keep pretending you're the hero. I lowered the knife for a second, and I heard it. My sister's voice, calling me from behind Ethan. Crying. Begging. John, help me. Please, it's so cold here. Something in me cracked. I screamed and rushed forward, blade raised, heart breaking open. But the world bent before I reached him. The forest itself stood up. It wasn't just trees anymore. It was mouths in the bark, eyes watching from twisted knots. Fingers made of branches stretched toward me, trying to pull me under. Kuroth had spoken through Ethan. Now it was speaking for itself. And it was inside me. Inside my grief. My guilt. My rage. This wasn't a war I could win with fire or iron. This was a war of memory. And I was losing. I don't remember lighting the match. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe something inside me, the last piece of me not broken, took over. The match flared in my hand, its tiny flame shivering against the cold breath of the forest. I stared at it, hypnotized. My fingers trembled, but not from fear anymore. I was past fear. I was something colder now. Something sharper. The ritual tree loomed in front of me, twisted and huge, its bark black and pulsing like a living wound. Faces bulged from its surface, screaming in silence. Some were human. Some weren't. Ethan stood beside it, arms spread like a priest before an altar. His body was barely human now. Root veins coiled across his chest and arms. His eyes glowed like coals buried under ash. I could still hear his voice in my head, calm, smooth, convincing. You don't have to burn it, John, he said softly. You don't have to burn me. We can fix everything. Bring her back. Heal the wound. I took a step forward. The canister of demon oil hung heavy at my hip. I unscrewed the cap, the thick stench of sulfur and rot curling into my nose. She's not coming back, I whispered. You killed her, or fed her to this thing. Either way, it ends tonight. He frowned, like a disappointed father. You're still clinging to pain. But pain isn't meant to be endured. It's meant to be transformed. The forest can do that for you. For all of us. I hurled the oil across the base of the tree. The liquid splashed, coating the roots and dripping down the carved faces. Some of them twitched. One began to cry. The match in my hand burned lower. I looked at Ethan. One last time. He didn't beg. He didn't scream. He only said, "You'll regret it." I dropped the flame. The world ignited. The tree roared, not with fire, but with voices. Thousands, maybe millions. Screaming, pleading, laughing. The fire crawled up its trunk, slow at first, then hungrily. Bark cracked and oozed black sap. Faces bubbled and split. The forest itself shrieked, branches whipping wildly as if trying to smother the flames. Ethan charged. His scream was part rage, part sorrow. I barely dodged his swing. He moved like a man unchained from flesh, fast and brutal. His hands clawed at me, fingers like bone knives. He caught my arm, tore through my jacket and into skin. I drove the iron blade into his side. He gasped. Steam rose from the wound as the metal hissed inside him. Holy iron, blessed in fire and blood. Ethan staggered, clutching the blade. His eyes met mine, no longer glowing, just tired. You still don't understand, he rasped. Kuroth isn't in the tree. He's in the roots. In the earth. In memory. The fire behind him flared, sending sparks high into the sky. A tree limb cracked and fell, crushing part of the sigil. The air vibrated with a low hum, like something old and deep had been disturbed. Ethan collapsed. Not with a scream, but a sigh. I backed away, the heat scorching my face, the smoke biting at my eyes. The flames were spreading now, licking through the forest, jumping from tree to tree. Faces melted. Voices faded into nothing. I don't know how I found my way out. I just ran. Branches tore at me. Roots tried to pull me down. But I kept moving, every breath a struggle, every step a fight. Behind me the forest howled. And then silence. Not peace. Just silence. When I reached the treeline, the world beyond the woods felt wrong. Too still. Too bright. Like waking from a nightmare into a room you no longer recognize. I looked back once. Smoke curled above the canopy. The sigil was gone, but the ground still pulsed. And in the wind I heard it. A whisper. We're not done yet. I barely made it out. My body ached as if the forest had ripped into my bones, but nothing hurt more than the heavy weight in my chest. I trailed my fingers along the rough bark of an old cedar near the treeline, trying to feel something real in the chill that gripped me. I left behind the darkness that had swallowed so many lost souls, yet every step echoed in my mind, as if I were still trapped beneath the oppressive green canopy. I lay my head down on the hood of my battered car, closed the door, and sat there watching the forest. The twilight bled into the sky like spilled ink, and in that uncertain moment, I could no longer tell where the forest ended and the night began. The memory of Ethan's smile, haunted and knowing, stayed with me, a constant reminder that even as I walked away, something clung to me from that twisted world. The forest was quiet now, unnervingly quiet. But I knew the silence hid secrets that would one day rise again. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a worn leather journal. I had already inked the grim story of my journey in it, trying to capture every terror, every whisper, every moment where I nearly lost myself. I buried the journal at the edge of the woods, marking the spot with a small wooden cross that I had carved during a moment of desperate hope. Burying it felt like a prayer, a promise that I would try to keep the evil at bay, even though I knew deep down that some parts of me would always belong to that cursed place. Driving away was like leaving behind a piece of my soul. The soft hum of the engine and the steady road ahead did little to ease the memories of the forest's twisted paths and the echo of Ethan's words. Fire doesn't burn memory. I kept hearing them, mingling with the persistent rustling of leaves that followed me long after I left. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I close my eyes and see a flicker of flame among the trees or feel that prickling sensation that signals unseen eyes watching me. And I wonder if, out there in the sprawling darkness, the forest still breathes and waits. I wonder if somewhere, beneath its tangled roots and gnarled trunks, its dark heart pulses in time with mine, forever bound by secrets I can never fully leave behind. I drive on, carrying that unspoken promise that someday I might return, not to face the terror, but to finally learn what it truly means to let go. Until then, the forest and I remain linked by an unbreakable, terrible bond, a story unfinished, echoing in the silent, haunted night.